Hold on to your butts.
Hang on, we're in for some chop.
You keep using that word. I don't think it means what you think it means.
Oh, somebody please think of the children!
Welcome to the DeEducated
What is up,
podcast.
DeEducated? Welcome to episode 11. My name is Chris.
I'm Mark, and if you like pina coladas and getting caught in the rain. Have you ever actually listened to that song? It is absolutely repugnant when you actually think about what's going on. The man and the wife are basically so bored in their marriage and no longer want to be together that they go out and they try to find somebody to cheat on with, and they end up finding each other to cheat on with. And then everybody thinks it's some sort of romantic friggin' story. I don't get it.
Well, I think what's most important is that it's a much more romantic story when you sing it off key on air.
Well, exactly, right. And with the stuffy, nosy, nasally sound is even better, right?
Yeah, no,
totally.
I absolutely adored that part.
Right.
Hey,
That was the
let's
best part.
introduce our guest here. We're also joined by Darcy Meredith. He's going to be joining us for the episode. We're going to be talking to him about beer and specifically about craft beers, micro brews and pilsners and IPAs and blah de blah de blah de. We're going to do all that a little bit later, but he's going to join us for the whole show. Darcy, welcome to the show. How you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me here. It's exciting to be on your podcast.
Excellent. Thanks,
Fantastic.
Darcy.
It is very exciting for you, isn't it? I mean, it's a
Yeah,
pleasure for
also,
us to have
Mark
you here.
What's that?
What'd you say?
I was hoping Mark was going to sing more, but whatever.
Well,
That can be arranged. Don't you worry about
that
it.
makes one of us, I guess.
Just do the whole song. I've only heard what they play in Shrek.
50-50, man. So, we're talking, as long as you got 50% of the fans, that's all that matters.
I don't know about that, but whatever. Hey, Mark, what'd you do this week?
I have been sick as beep this week. It's interesting. Don't worry. It's not the vid. All right, everybody just
The
calm
vid?
down.
That's not
The
what it's
vid.
called.
The cooved.
It's the coof.
The coof.
Yeah.
Don't worry, anybody. I'm good. I don't have that. I don't have any of the symptoms, but I do have all of the symptoms for hay fever. And so I actually ended up having to even call in sick on Saturday. Was just under the weather, couldn't breathe. That really tired feeling you get, and it sucks. And every freaking year I get hit with this. Right around this time of year, the farmers are out taking their crops off. The weather's changing, and I just get slammed. Or I've also heard that there's a really bad cold going around too. So. Yeah, it just kind of kicked my butt. I was able to train Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, but by Saturday, I could feel it kind of coming on as well. So, yeah.
It's interesting that you say that because you're not the only one who's had it. Joe and I just hit it a lot better than you did.
Oh, yeah, fair enough.
We're just not little wimps. That's why Joe was working. That's why Joe was working from home for most of the week. And while I wasn't doing anything in classes, I wasn't demonstrating for Friday and Saturday because I had it as well.
Yeah.
And we actually thought that it was hay fever too. And then we found out that a number of other people have had it. And it's more virulent than COVID.
Clearly, because I don't know a single person. I've never met anybody, never come across a single person that has ever had COVID. Not one. I don't know anybody.
And you know that this isn't COVID because it's all sinus. It's all
yeah, absolutely.
And it was like, sure. I mean, yeah, well, that's a symptom of COVID. Yeah, well, so is friggin' diarrhea and,
they actually
the ability to think for yourself. So
they actually say that COVID is more cardiovascular than it is sinus and head anyway. So
yeah, well, but they list every symptom under the sun.
Yeah, it's true.
So.
There's even a guy that has COVID so bad that his testicles expanded and all the virus apparently went into his testes. So make sure everybody's wearing your mask so that you don't become sterile from COVID.
That seems like a cover-up.
right?
What sites are you visiting? I've never heard any of this.
Oh yeah. Oh, I could. I'll send you the link. You'll get a kick out of it.
Yeah,
I'll just add all the testicle news sites that I follow.
It's
Yeah.
That's right. It's testicles.org and testes.net Canada. So, and how about you?
Testes.net. You mean testescanada.net?
Canada.net. Yeah, that was it.
Yeah.
I was trying to come up with it off the top of my head, but it didn't work so well.
You too can be up on all the latest testicle news for only $19.95 a month.
Yeah, send me $19.95 a month, and I'll tell you all about testicles all day long.
Can we move on?
We totally can, for sure.
What else you do this week?
Basically, I did train, like I say, Tuesday, Thursday, and on Monday. So just, standard jujitsu, Muay Thai. I did actually happen to sneak out to the range on Wednesday a little bit, put my Crossfire scope on my 22 and got it sighted in. It's big improvement off of the $50 Chinesium piece of crap that I had on there. So I have to say it was, I'm the type that don't like blaming my equipment, but yeah, like it just, the optics make such a difference.
Sometimes it's the equipment.
Sometimes it is. Like I was putting rounds, excuse me, I was putting rounds on top of each other at 25 within, maybe 15, 20 minutes of having it sighted in, and just going through a lot of the stuff that I did at Maple Seed. So that really also kind of clinches it for me too, that it's something I need to invest in.
Well, it's good that you at least got the Crossfire scope on there, because I haven't told you this yet, but I've been talking with the other instructors in training for Maple Seed in Saskatchewan, and we're looking at putting together like a mini training course. And so what we're thinking about doing is bringing a couple of our friends that maybe have already done a Maple Seed, and just like having just like 4 people on the line, just so we can practice.
That would be fun.
Run through calling the line and take our next step towards, hey, I'm actually even wearing my.
You are. Look at that.
Take our next step towards becoming a full instructor, sort of thing. So you get to be part of that. So it's a good thing you got the proper.
Yeah, that would be. Yeah, that would be awesome. And as I told you earlier, I heard back from Savage. So some of you might know I've been running this Axis Savage.
Axis One
Savage. That's right. Yeah. And I've been having light strike issues and just futzing around with it. And I've almost thrown that rifle down the range, which probably would have worked better. So I sent it off and I heard back from them, and they're telling me that they were unable to replicate the issue. So we'll find out when it comes back.
Yeah, your warranty has expired. I love that they're unable to replicate the issue, but this is an issue that's all over the internet. It's like a known defect with the Axis One bolt. Well,
what was funny is that, sorry to cut you off, but at the beginning of COVID, when I wanted to send it away and they told me that their offices were closed, the one guy did get to talk. He was like, oh yeah, that's well known on that bolt.
Somebody's trying to circle the wagons.
Yeah,
so too many warranty fixes.
Yeah, so we'll definitely once it comes back, we'll run some rounds through it, see what's up, and kind of go from there, I guess.
It'll be really interesting to see whether it fires flawlessly when you come back.
Yeah, well, and like we were joking around, but they did say that they. I think he said, I can't remember the exact wording, but it was like they ensured that it was within spec or something like that. So they probably
like completely replaced the firing pin and spring and just like, there's nothing wrong with this. None that we want to admit to anyway.
So here you go. So we'll find out. And how about you? Other than being a little under the weather yourself this week, what did you end up doing?
Well, I Joanne got sick. I think Monday night she started to feel a little under the weather, but she was like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday sort of thing. So she just mostly just stayed at home and worked at home because, that's what you're supposed to do when you're sick. When you get sick, you stay home.
Right.
So she did that for most of the week. I actually didn't start to really feel anything until Friday. Mm-hmm. And I didn't get it as bad as she did either. And mine pretty much was gone by yesterday evening. Maybe a little bit of residual, but like
Mhm.
today's Sunday, I haven't been around anybody, not going to be around anybody. And I'm pretty confident that
Mhm.
I'll be right as rain by tomorrow.
Yeah.
So it didn't affect me too much. You didn't have much of a choice, obviously, like you called in sick so you couldn't be here. You were obviously feeling worse than I was. So I
Yeah,
did
definitely.
teach classes, but I wasn't really in contact with anybody. I mean, it's social distance protocols no matter what anyways, right? So
That's right.
and it's not like I'm like coughing or spittling or instructing moistly or anything like that. So plus
That's
we got the
funny.
garage door open all the time now.
Yeah.
So I mean, you're getting like fresh air coming in all the time, and it's a
Mhm.
big building, so not a big deal.
Mhm.
So I had that. I was in Regina for Wednesday afternoon. I went down to Regina. Did a little bit of setup for the maple seed that we taught at the Regina Fishing Game Club on Thursday, and we got to do a little bit of shooting. Got to test my gray birch at a little bit of a further distance. The funny thing about shooting 22 beyond 100 rounds is it's really hard, especially with plugs, to hear the gong hits
100 meters.
past 100 meters.
Yeah, you said 100 rounds.
Or sorry, past 100 meters. Yeah. So I put it at 100 meters, and the Regina Fishing Game, man, the former CFO there really gave them the business. Really just must not have liked those guys down there for whatever reason, because they've got the most ridiculous setup there. They've got I forget even what they call them, like these stupid shades where you can't stand up and shoot, and you can't raise you're supposed to be, so you can't raise the muzzle past the berm height. But they had them build it so far ahead of the line. It's like 10 feet in front of the line. So you can absolutely shoot above the berm height if you really want to. Like, and nobody's going to shoot above the berm height unless they're trying to be a jerk anyway. And this isn't stopping people from being jerks. It's just preventing people from doing any position other than bench shooting off of their concrete benches. So you can't shoot prone. You can't shoot standing. You can shoot seated, either like off your elbows or off of a bipod. And like they just absolutely mess them up. So they're taking steps to trying to get side berms going and other things so they can get rid of those things. I really hope for their sake that having Bob Freeberg, has been announced as the new provincially appointed CFO. Only met him a couple of times, but he seems like a very fair person and obviously knows a lot about firearms, having a big background in that. So hopefully he'll be able to help the guys, fix their situation. Cause I don't know, man, like there's a farmer's field over on top of their berm. Their berm must be 35, 40, maybe even 50 feet in the air. Like it's a big hill that goes up onto this farmer's field. There's no buildings immediately behind there. It's just open field. But apparently they had a complaint one time. The way that the story is told, that these bullets were given by the farmer to the old CFO, and like here these guys are shooting bullets into my field, but they looked at these pristine bullets that had no rifling on them. And so there's just some hinky stuff going on. There's some real questions about it. But hopefully they can get something a little bit more practical in terms of being able to shoot, because they can't even practice maple seed stuff. I mean, we had to close the whole range so that we could go out beyond the firing line to shoot at 25 meters in all the positions for maple seed. So anyway, just hoping for those guys' sake. I hope they are able to get that figured out in the next couple of months or whatever, or the next time they get certified or whatever. But the point is, I got to shoot the gray birch out to 200 meters on, I think they said it was a 10-inch gong. I'm not even sure. So I was just shooting it off my elbows. At 100 meters, it was boring. I was rapid firing it and hitting every shot at 100. So it was just kind of boring. So I started going up to 200. And at first I thought I was missing, because you're just hearing the dullest little thud, like almost like it could be the back of the berm. But then, then people started spotting for me and they're like, no, you're hitting it. And like we were getting like 9 out of 10, and then I had one that was I had one misfire in a magazine of 10, but so I only fired 9 but hit 9 out of 9. So that was pretty good. Like this gun is an accurate rifle for a 22. There's no question about that whatsoever. And it's a semi-automatic as well. Like 200 meters, I'm really seriously considering trying to get some time off to enter a CRPS match next year and just see what I can do with it. And apparently a lot of people are using 1022s that are doing quite well in CRPS. So I'm pretty excited about it. The only problem as usual is, do I have time to be able to compete and try it out? But, another feather in the cap of gray birch, because this is a pretty solid rifle. Still having extraction issues. I'm waiting for them to get their bolt going so I can get the bolt. But I mean, I'm working with like a 45-plus-year-old Bolton extractor, so I'm still really waiting to see what they've got. So so then we taught the Maple Seed on Thursday. It was great. We had a really good group. Only about 8 people. COVID is screwing up the registrations, but everybody, is nice, socially distanced along the line. 8 people, really good shooters. We had 2 out of 8 people were able to qualify. 2 really good shooters. They do CRPS competitions, so they're, I guess you would expect them to be able to qualify. But they're also using like Vortex Strike Eagle 5-25 scopes with Voodoo bolt action rifles. Like, I don't know if you know, but their rigs are like several $1,000 rigs, like for 22-1 rifle, and they're using like Lapua SK ammo, and like they did it upright. They made sure that if they weren't going to qualify, it wasn't going to be their equipment that it had to do with. So but they both qualified. They did a great job. We had a number of other people out that did fantastic. We had a youth shooter out, came out with his dad and a couple of other people, a couple of brothers, and another couple of other guys, and they did really good. It was a great time. So that was primarily me.
Awesome. Sounds like a fantastic week.
Hey, Darce, just because you're our guest speaker today, did you do anything really interesting that people might actually want to know about?
I actually did. So Friday, I went and checked out a brewery that's going to be opening here in Warman pretty soon. So if you're in the Saskatoon area, you should check out Homebound Brewing on Instagram and Facebook. They've got a really innovative design that's just not seen here in Canada because of the laws regarding opening a brewery. You have to have your brewery separate from your tap room. And the engineers were able to make it so that his brewery is not separate from his tap room.
And
so it's going to be really interesting. Yep.
Fantastic.
So it's going to be, it's going to be an interesting space. And it's actually a huge step forward in microbrewing in general, just because of the amount of restrictions we have here in Canada that don't exist anywhere else in the world.
Right.
What kind of restrictions do you mean? Like, are we talking just like Puritan bullcrap restrictions, or?
Pretty much. I mean, I don't want to speak too ill of the governing bodies. They do keep me employed. But a lot of it is a lot of people misinterpreting codes and trying to justify their job. So we kind of have a lot of really, really dumb regulations, like just not being able to have the brewery open to the tap room so you can kind of see the process. Whereas you go to the States and every single craft brewery, the brewery is right in the tap room floor and you can just go check out all the vessels, and usually they've just got like a rope separating it from the tap room.
Interesting. Isn't that funny how our city was founded over 130 years ago as a temperance colony, and we still have like hangovers from all that sort of stuff, no pun intended.
Oh yeah, it's unbelievable working in the industry, like the insight that we get on the history of just brewing in general in Saskatchewan, and how slow we are to progress compared to other provinces.
Well, there's no question about that. You can see that even just on the consumer end of things.
Oh yeah.
Well, we're going to talk a whole bunch more about brew in a little while, but brewing, specifically beer. Why don't we start with the news here, Mark?
That sounds great.
Pull up our first news article for you here.
All right.
Maybe I should open the article that we're trying to do. There we go. I'm doing everything in the wrong order. The Center Daily Times. Take it away, Mark.
Yeah, so basically this is how we're going to end up with the zombie apocalypse. Scroll down a little bit. So for some, this is a little bit of older news already, because I actually put this up 2 weeks ago, but basically the United States is shooting for a November 1st date to have the coronavirus vaccine out and about. And when you look at some of when you read through the article, you see that I'll read the one line here. CDC urgently requests your assistance in expediting applications for these distribution facilities. So this is Dr. Redfield who is asking for basically the permits and the requirements to be waived so that they can go ahead and start with the vaccines for COVID-19 for November 1st. And the crazy part about this is the amount of testing that normally goes into a regular vaccine is, a year or more long. And they're talking about doing this in a few weeks, basically a few weeks from now. So we're talking, 8 weeks at most, right?
This is fantastic.
This is how I'm saying every single sci-fi movie ever, this is how you end up curing the one disease and making it even worse. And now what's fascinating is, and I'm not trying to be conspiratorial. Operation Warp Speed, yeah.
They should call it ludicrous speed.
I'm not trying to be conspiratorial, but there was an article from the CBC that said that there was a mystery disease that was coming out through some of these virus testing or viral testings. And one of the things I found was basically a type of meningitis, a rare type of meningitis that had impacted a whole bunch of people in the UK for some of these test vaccines. I am by no means an anti-vaxxer, but good God, could we just all you know what? Let's live with the social distancing for an extra little bit. And
no, you know what? I completely disagree.
The world.
Completely disagree. Do it.
This is how we get our zombies. It's true.
Okay, zombie apocalypse. Let's do it. It's 2020.
Yeah.
I got
sometime. Let's just expedite that process, right?
Yeah, we got nothing else to live for. Let's do it.
Yeah, that's true. I'm just this is oh no. This is literally like the dog sitting on the table with the fire around going, this is fine. It's totally fine.
Yeah.
Not a problem at all.
But let's face it, it's the dog sitting around on a table with a fire all around him saying it's fine with everything else too.
It's true, yeah. We are in a
Did you just freeze, Mark? Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are back. We had the worst of technical difficulties. First, my modem quit. So I'm the host. We lost the internet. Kaboom, it went down. Then the mesh network wouldn't reacquire the IP address when the modem rebooted. Had to reboot both several times. Had to reboot the computer even because it wouldn't get the proper IP. Just conflicts everywhere. Canadian ISPs suck. Is basically what this comes down to. And this gave Darcy an opportunity to change a little bit around in terms of hardware. And we're back. Let's move on. Hey.
And I'm not hiding behind a microphone.
You're not hiding behind a microphone. Your quality's a little bit worse, but not that much worse. It's just fine. Let's keep on rolling. Mark, what else we got in the news, man?
Well, if the zombies don't get us, it's definitely going to be the bears. So climate change has caused so this article doesn't actually refer to this, but I was doing a little bit more research on this topic, and climate change, they're saying, is now causing there to be more bears being interacting with the public. So a guy was attacked, 36-year-old man was attacked by a grizzly bear in where was it?
Pemberton.
Pemberton, British Columbia. Apparently there was 3 guys. They were out on a hike. He got attacked, and they were actually able to call in using the iReach satellite communication device. And the 3 guys were flown out. He is in stable condition. And they did. There was another piece where, my apologies. It's not in this article either, but the conservation officers caught the bear Thursday evening and said it would be relocated far from human contact. I always find it funny when they do this because I understand, like in the Yukon, they put the bears down as soon as they have any human contact. In British Columbia, they'll frickin' relocate the bears. They'll move them around. You can't, like, a bear, once a bear has attacked somebody, or once they've come into a human habitation or something like that, you can't leave them. I hate to be that guy, but guess what? You need to put the bears down because we just can't have them in our populace. And unfortunately, this is increasing due to COVID. But yeah, that's basically the story there. Speaking of bears and things that need to go away. Ridiculous.
Things in general that need to go away. Yeah.
Things that need to go away are the airlines. Let's abolish all airlines. This, let's play this video at the very top. We'll start this video. Let's watch this and then I'll comment.
Okay, hold on a sec here, because if I'm going to be playing video, I've got to share it just a little bit different. I've got to share my computer sound.
Okay. Well, then I'll just kind of vamp for a moment.
We're good.
So, okay, there you go. That was me vamping.
Of course, we're going to have to sit here through 30 seconds of commercial. Oh, maybe not. So there's passengers defending this group on the plane.
Yeah.
So okay, give us the background on this, because that looks ridiculous.
Yeah. So basically on WestJet, so that's for those of you who don't know, that's a Western Canadian airline. This family was they were on the airplane. And they were sitting getting ready for the flight. Now, they had two children with them, a 3-year-old and a 19-month-old. And because Canada is stupid and the people who run airlines are stupid, the law is that anybody under the age of 3 doesn't have to have a mask, but anybody over the age of 3 has to have a mask. I have
Which
a 3-year-old.
Which is funny because CDC and WHO are saying age 4.
Age 4, exactly. And I have a 3-year-old and they're not wearing a mask. So anyway, what ended up happening was the kid was having a snack. The 3-year-old was having a snack. So she had taken her mask down, which I brought up last week about what if I want a drink or a snack on an airplane. And the air steward people, not stewardesses, well, I can't think of the name. I'm trying not to call them stewardesses.
The flight attendants?
Flight attendants, thank you. The flight attendants, who are nothing more than glorified waiters and waitresses, to be clear, started freaking out, saying she has to wear a mask, she has to wear a mask, she has to wear a mask. So they said, okay, fine. They put the mask on the kid, and the kid starts hyperventilating, starts panicking, and actually throws up in the mask. They take the mask off, trying to clean the kid up, trying to get her ready for the flight. The flight attendants continuously freak out and then eventually call the police as this family is calmly trying to tell them what's going on. So when you hear that woman who says, we've already seen it, we've seen it, we can all witness it, what she's referring to is this kid puking in the mask and the family trying to clean it up. And this goes to my issue that I have with airlines in general. First of all, they're nothing but security theater. And a lot of the time, the flight attendants are absolute horrible people. They are just the worst customer service, and they don't give a shit about people. Now, this is the one thing I want to add to this whole thing. So the family
Canadian transport law mandates anyone above the age of 2 to wear a face mask. That is absolutely ridiculous.
I know.
All of the CDC, WHO, they all say under the age of 4, it is dangerous to wear a mask.
That's right. And yet because the airlines are such poorly managed organizations, they pissed away all their money. They got this massive bailout, and now they want to force people to, or they want to try and get people back in the air. This was the one thing I wanted to read, and this goes to part of my point with when it comes to airlines. And I've had lots of bad experiences on airlines, and so this is why I've got no use for CATSA. That's the guys who like to touch your genitals and your ass when you're out on the airplane, or when you're getting on the airplane. I got no use for the airlines, and I've got no use for the flight attendants.
Transport Screening Authority, yeah.
Yeah, so this is the one line that
Or safety, Safety Authority.
The safety, yeah, because they're like, oh, your safety is our number one concern. It isn't, but anyway. So this is the one thing I wanted to read. It said here, this is a quote, that came from WestJet, and so not only did these people get removed from the airplane, they also ended up canceling the flight. It says, due to the rapid escalation of the situation on board, our crew felt uncomfortable to operate the flight, and the flight was subsequently canceled. So the flight attendants and the pilots said, there was an issue on our plane. So then they canceled the entire flight for everybody.
Well, they should feel uncomfortable. They made a stupid call. And now everybody on that flight hates them.
Absolutely. And they should be hated for acting so absolutely pathetically. Abolish all airlines, crash them all, bankrupt them all, get rid of them all. They need to be completely redone. The way airlines operate nowadays is absolutely asinine.
Well, if you're going to do that, you have to raise my Air Canada stock first, so that I at least get it back to par, so that I can sell it, and then. Well,
you know what? You may as well just you should have just taken that money out and thrown it in the garbage.
Well, don't tell me that, Mark. Come on.
Sorry, dude. Airlines are gone. They're a thing of the past. At least these ones.
Well, they're not though. I mean, they're going to continue on. They're going to keep going, and they're going to get their bailouts, and we're going to continue with this ridiculousness every time we fly.
It's absolutely repugnant, and airlines are responsible for our response to the safety theater that we're seeing in COVID. People had it done in a microcosm in the airlines, and now they're having it done everywhere else they go. And
they're the kings of safety theater. I mean, they're the ones who brought us all the ridiculousness that we go through nowadays since 9/11. And not saying that things shouldn't have happened after 9/11. That's not what I'm saying. And I'm also not saying things shouldn't happen during a pandemic. What I'm saying is what they do, what they choose to do, is absolutely theater and ridiculous. I feel really bad for this family, quite frankly. I feel really bad for them.
Yeah, sorry, one quick comment. Literally, you can look up every single report that it's out there. I'm not making it up. I don't have it off the top of my head, but go ahead and Google it. CATSA, the screeners in Canada, and TSA in the United States are incompetent. And maybe not the individuals, but as organizations are fully incompetent. They have done massive studies on these organizations where they've set knives, guns, all sorts of stuff, and they don't catch anything. They don't stop anything.
Well, keeping in mind that CATSA is different than WestJet as an airline. I mean, we're talking about two different things here. But
I agree, but I'm just saying that airlines in general and theater and security theater is
the whole industry.
The entire industry needs to be completely bankrupted and rebuilt from the ground up. Sorry,
that sounds a lot like defunding the police, Mark.
I say we defund the airlines. Yeah, you guys want to protest? There's a protest.
All right. So next.
Yeah, you've got something going on.
Well, next is I think this is interesting. So hang on, just let me share this with everybody here. So Denmark. So this is CBC, and I love CBC. How they the spinsters they're great at this crap, controlling the narrative. But anyway, so the title here is "No Masks, No Distancing. Schools in Denmark defy COVID-19 with success so far."
So far.
Subheadline: countries around the world are looking to the Danes for guidance. And the story here is about how in April, Denmark reopened their schools and without social distancing, without masks, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so they went through the remainder of their school year and now into the next school year without any problems, essentially. And now the CBC has decided that this is, and they even mentioned this in the article, that this is the example. The Danes are the example for Canada to follow when it comes to reopening schools. First of all, this article, it was published on September 13th, like yesterday. Right. So it's a day late and $1 short, first of all, because schools reopened last week. Second of all, the Danes just did what the Swedes did.
Right.
The Danes just looked at the Swedes and said, "Oh, you guys didn't even close your schools, and it's been a month and there's no problems. Well, maybe we'll reopen our schools also then." and neither of them have had any problems. But the CBC can't say that the Swedes are the model to follow, because the CBC is pushing all of the fear mongering and everything else in relation to COVID-19, and they've been pushing the narrative that the Swedish model has failed, and that it's a failed experiment, and they killed everybody and they caused all these problems. But now that Denmark's done it for the last 6 friggin' months, now that the Danes are the people to follow. So it's just a ridiculous article. And the whole thing is like, okay, the Danes are following what the Swedes are doing. Cool. So they did what they did when it came to schools. Why are we still freaking out here? You gotta know, man, the things I'm not even, so I'm a teacher, but not I'm an educator. Like, frankly, that's when it comes to teaching children, especially, what I do for a living is I am an educator. I may not have a bachelor's of education. I don't have a fancy university degree to tell me that I can teach children. Yet, for some reason, people still bring their children to me to learn how to be an adult, to interact with society, to learn how to, function as a human being. And make no mistake, that parents bring their children to us to learn life skills. It's not just about learning how to punch and kick and do martial arts. We teach life skills. So I'll have words with anybody. I'll debate anybody who wants to try and say that I'm not an educator.
Right.
But I am not a part of the education system.
Yeah.
We run an after-school program. We were running day camps during the staggered start. We were running summer camps leading up to the start of school. So I have a lot of interaction when it comes to school-age children and running programming for school-age children. The abject ridiculousness that has been going on locally with our school district, and the lack of planning, the lack of preparedness, the flip-flopping on rules and what needs to be done and how things are going to work has caused so much confusion and so many problems. Organizationally, and just for kids in general and parents in general. It is an absolute failure. And what is the education system doing? Well, they're just saying, well, the government failed us. The government didn't give us any plans. Why do you need the government to give you plans?
The plan was for you to figure out what the plan was.
The plan was for you, so here's the other thing. And yes, our government is not doing a fantastic job. They're really not.
Yeah,
I mean,
I agree.
Kids went back to school September 8th. They were back in school. Bell rang 9 a.m. 10:30 a.m. the provincial government held their conference, letting the public know what was going on for school reopening.
Yeah.
Kids were already in school for an hour and a half.
Yeah.
So nobody can pretend that the government is doing a good job with this. And again, as a small business owner, I absolutely understand that the government is doing a terrible job of managing this pandemic. And here's the difference, though. You sat on your thumbs like helpless wieners, doing nothing, waiting for somebody else to tell you what to do. And then you wonder why you're disorganized and you don't know what to do and you have no idea what's going on.
That's right. Yeah.
Now Denmark is the people to follow. Well, guess what? They've been doing it since April. Sweden's been doing it since March. I mean, merely they just didn't shut anything
They just
down.
didn't shut anything down. They just
Get
said, hey,
your
guys.
crap together.
Yeah.
Stop waiting for other people to tell you what to do. Stop waiting for other people to lead you like a lemming, and take control. The people who are in control of these school divisions, you know what needs to be done to be safe. The pandemic didn't happen last week. We had a full 6-month lead up to this. We know what's going on with the pandemic. We know how to react. And you know what? Every single business owner in the country is proof that we know how to do this safely. We know how to start living with this pandemic because it is not going away. Why are you all of a sudden caught unaware, waiting for the government to tell you what to do because you can't make a decision for yourself? The whole thing is ridiculous, and the CBC is ridiculous, and the Danes are not who to follow. The Swedes are, or maybe, you know what? Maybe the Danes are who to follow. But
I don't care. Just follow somebody that's actually using their damn heads.
Or don't follow anyone.
Well, right at the end of the day, we need to start making some decisions that, like you just said, that just start making these decisions, start leading. But we don't. Leadership isn't a thing anymore. People don't have political will. They don't have political leadership anymore.
They don't have leadership skills, period. And that's why parents send their children to martial arts lessons, because it's one of the last places in this world where children can learn leadership skills.
It's true. Absolutely true. It's like, I think we maybe talked about before, but really quick, even organized group sports, when they've done studies with kids, the kids are so used to having the refs and the parents tell them what positions to play and this and that some kids can't even do a pickup game of basketball or baseball or hockey. They've completely lost. They have no idea how to just
no problem
just
solving
play.
Skills whatsoever.
Yeah, exactly.
And frankly, problem solving isn't really taught in schools at all. And a major reason why it's not is because problem solving skills amongst faculty is a diminishing skill.
Yeah, that too.
How do you teach what you don't know?
Yeah, that's right. Well, because they don't teach it in university anymore, right? So, speaking of people who have no problem-solving skills and need get a head shake and piss poor leadership, I'm just going to set this up real quick, and then we can kind of have a little bit of discussion around it.
Sure.
The Integrity March was held on September 10th or 11th, I believe it was.
It was the 12th.
Oh, the 12th, pardon me. So Integrity March was held on the 12th. For those you don't know, that's the CCFR March on Parliament Hill against the Order in Council. And, obviously right away, the headline of this article speaks to, some of the biggest issues. Pro-gun marchers speak out on federal government's assault weapon ban.
Yep.
Assault weapons were already banned in this country.
And this is CTV. This isn't even CBC.
CBC, exactly.
Not that we can pretend that the CTV news is much better.
That's right. So when you read this article, it just oozes spin, and it oozes, they're trying to tell the narrative of all these different things. But here's one line that I really wanted to touch on, and then I'll let you kind of jump all over this. Was now this Nathaniel Provost, who was a survivor Natalie Provost, who was a survivor of Polytechnique. I understand everything that happened at Polytechnique, but listen to this quote. A hunter has the right to hunt. My family has hunters. There's no problem, Provost said. What worries us the most is that there is little gun control. If you say that there's little gun control in this country, you are lying or woefully ignorant.
Yeah.
That's it. This is an either or. You're either straight out lying or you don't know. There's no other way you can make a claim to say that there's little gun control in this country. You don't know what
little gun control looks like.
Exactly.
Walk down the streets of Lahore, Pakistan for a little while.
Right? Or, God, New Hampshire, look at the United States. They have far less gun control than us. So to say that we have little gun control here is beyond.
We actually have some of the strictest gun control in the country. The problem is that these morons won't be happy until there are no guns. Their idea of adequate gun control is that there are no guns, regardless of the fact that it is absolutely futile to try and unring that bell. They were invented hundreds upon hundreds of years ago. You're not going to unring that bell. It's just not going to happen.
Right, exactly. No,
anyway, so can I break down this news article? Because there's a lot of horse crap here. So first of all, we need to understand that they interviewed Natalie Provost, okay? And like the very first quote goes to Natalie Provost talking about a hunter has the right to hunt, blah, 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 blah. And then talking about, the worst horror scene in my life. It didn't last very long, but it killed 6 people. And for me, it's 4 bullets in my body. Like, I understand she was shot. It was terrible. Like, nobody's going to deny that. Here's my problem that I've always had with Natalie Provost. Somebody who is a victim of a tragedy, somebody who has been traumatized, and it doesn't matter how they're traumatized, what type of trauma it is, what the circumstances were, the traumatized person is never going to be the best person to be determining policy.
This is why we don't allow the victims of crime to determine the punishment for the criminal.
Exactly. And this is exactly what this is. This is the victim of the crime who legitimately has experienced trauma and probably still struggles with the mental and possibly even the physical effects of that trauma, who is the one who for decades now has been allowed to create the punishment for, well, not even for the perpetrator of the crime, but for everyone who she thinks is associated with that.
That's
The
right.
problem is she has absolutely no objectivity. How could she possibly have any objectivity? How could we possibly even expect her to have any objectivity about this? It is completely unreasonable to expect that. But she's still given the microphone in the court of public opinion to pass judgment on everybody who had nothing to do with her victimization.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Like, we want to hear from people with lived experience, obviously,
Absolutely.
when we're trying to figure out policy that impacts everybody. But when you're actually trying to, when you're developing policy, you cannot, in no other circumstances would we say, like, hey, for cars, for example, right? Cars kill people every year, so let's get everybody who's ever been affected by an automobile accident to decide whether or not people can drive vehicles. Like, it's stupid.
And that's what's crazy is we don't do that for anything
else except for guns.
We talk about the Danforth shooter,
Yeah.
where when shortly before the Danforth shooting that killed 2 people, we talk about the van attack,
Right. Yeah.
in Toronto that what injured 13,
Yeah.
and killed 10.
That's right. Yeah.
And here's the quote from Natalie Provost: "It's maddening the speed at which these weapons destroy. It's also maddening, like, if it was a bomb, it would have destroyed even faster. And it doesn't matter how long it took the van driver to mow down 13 people on the streets of Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is insane. She's incapable of being objective about this, and the fact that she's given the license to pass judgment on people so I'll just leave that where it is. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The second quote, the only other person who is quoted here is a spokesperson for public safety, for Bill Blair's ministry, and talking about the use of an order in council is exactly the process the law provides for when it comes to classifying firearms, blah, 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 defending their decision. Both of the major spokespeople for the CCFR were literally there on Parliament Hill for the day.
And this is a critique I actually have. It says that the organization, the CCFR, did not respond to a request for comment, and so they were asked by CTV for comment. Now, maybe CTV wasn't there, but proper when you're doing like media relations and stuff like that, you should have had somebody on site. You should have also had somebody manning or staffing a phone. You should have had somebody staffing an email. Like, so it does fall on the CCFR. I do believe CTV would have allowed them to quote if they had been set up.
Having followed the CCFR for as long as I've been following them, they have regularly spoken out publicly about how the CTV and CBC specifically misquote them, don't quote them.
For sure.
It's ridiculous. But there's no
usually when that gets
them.
Right. Usually when that sort of stuff does get posted, though, like they did try. Now, how they tried or
how they tried is a question. I really question that. I mean, they were right there with a megaphone.
Yeah, exactly.
All you have to do is send a news reporter down there with the group and record what they said on the megaphone and just quote what was on the megaphone.
Yeah. Well, and how did they get the video, right? So
exactly.
They were definitely there.
So here's the other thing I'm going to break down the rest of this. Okay. Yeah. The Parliamentary Protective Service said roughly 800 people attended the event. That is an abject. Well, I don't know what Parliamentary Protective Service told them. The report from the CCFR was that PPS was reporting 5,000 people in attendance.
Mm-hmm.
That's a pretty big discrepancy.
Yeah, it is.
Now, here's the thing. So these CBC apparently amended one of their news reports and said around 1,000 people. So here's the thing. The CCFR says that they gave out 350 signs. Okay. If there were only 800 people in attendance, then you would expect within the crowd that there would be approximately 1 in every 2 people holding a sign. When you look at the video, you can barely see signs. They're so spread out throughout that crowd, it just doesn't lend credibility to 800.
Right.
Okay.
Well,
second of all,
yeah, go ahead.
Second of all, the CCFR gave out 2,000 wristbands. And they weren't giving out multiple wristbands to individuals. They were giving out 1 wristband per person. They ran out of wristbands and they gave out 2,000 of them. And they said that they had people asking all week, or sorry, for the rest of the time that they had people asking for wristbands, that they didn't have any more to give. They put there was an aerial photo taken of the march, and it spans, I should have brought it up, but it spans like 4 blocks north to south, a full block east, and then another 2 blocks back north, and it kind of makes a reverse J.
Yeah.
And there's people like sidewalk to sidewalk on these streets for what spans, what would that be, 7, maybe 8 blocks? That's not 800 people.
Right. So one of the things about that, like, especially when they do aerial photos and where they get these numbers from a lot of times, like the protective services, or you'll see the police will do this, or the lockdown protests had the same thing happen. What they do is they literally take a picture, they'll do an aerial photo, they'll figure out how many people can fit in a 2-meter square, right? And then they calculate out what the space is, and they say that's how many people are there. So depending upon the organization, they'll actually change how many people will fit in whatever that square is to make more or fewer people. For example, Trump did the exact same thing when he was during his inauguration, where he's like, there was 100,000 people out here. There was like 20,000, right? Because
but
that's what
line
they do.
is,
yeah.
It's difficult to say with any sort of certainty that there were 5,000 people there.
Right.
But there was a hell of a lot more than 800.
800, exactly. And that's what I'm getting at, is that likely this 800 number is either coming from some sort of a manipulation, or if they were talking about 800 people because this is the Parliamentary Protective Services, perhaps only 800 people made it onto the grounds. Right.
Well, that would make sense. How do you fit 5,000 people on that wing of the grounds?
That's right. Exactly. So, yeah.
It's ridiculous anyway. And this just makes me mad. 1,500 types of assault style weapons, pushing that narrative again.
Yeah.
You know, first of all, out of the original 1,500, 1,000 of them were just AR-15 variants.
That's right.
It was one gun. With 1,000 variants. Okay. And second of all, everything that's been banned since then, we're talking about bolt actions. We're talking about variants of semi-automatic rifles. We're talking about bolt action shotguns.
Yeah.
Like it's the most, anyway, people who are listening, they know the whole thing just frustrates me. Anyway, this news article is BS. I remember, Rod Giltaca and Tracy Wilson talking on their podcast about just wanting to have 1,000 people showing up to this event. And I think that it seems very clear that they had closer to 5,000 people showing up for this event. It looks like it was an absolute smashing success, and good on them.
Absolutely.
And, you know, there's absolutely no argument whatsoever that there is not media bias in this country.
For sure. And if I had the money and liked airlines, I would have gone out there myself.
Yeah.
But speaking of crazy lunatics, you should bring up our. So, well, first of all, let's open this up. We have a new segment that we're going to be bringing onto the podcast. This is more for the video side of the equation. So, those of you listening at home, do check us out on YouTube if you want to watch the video, but you'll be able to hear the audio portion. So, we have our new section called "Our Wild Weekly Videos of the Week." That's right. So the idea here is that because we are both, we're culture, we're violence. We want to show you guys some of the things that are happening on the interwebs and in the world today. So we've got 2 videos for this week. These are some pretty wacky videos. So Chris, kick off the first one here.
I'm just going to say for the record that both of these just make me sad.
They are sad, but they're hilarious. So let's play them.
So here's a drunk ring girl who, first of all, is like puncturing the canvas. So
Right?
I'll talk as I'm playing here.
Yeah,
So
for sure. No.
she's stumbling around. Her ankles are collapsing on the canvas. She can barely walk whatsoever. So she decides to ham it up, and she starts being a pole dancing girl on the ring ropes here.
What I can't figure out is how is it that nobody tried to stop her well before this? Like,
I don't know. This whole thing is just kind of embarrassing, to be honest with you.
well, yeah, that's the funniest part about
It's
it.
like bouncing on the ropes now. What's
Yeah.
You have to turn up. You got to
She's
turn up the
Bronco
commentary.
riding. I don't
You
know
got
if
to
I
turn up the
want to.
commentary a little
Oh,
bit.
now
'Cause
she's
listen to the
taking a-
guys.
So the referee finally tries to kick her out. She has
Look at
hair
that.
extensions on. She lost one of them. It's not a weave, but whatever.
Like the commentators are pretty funny too. Like, oh my god, like seriously, woman. Like this is the thing that I've never understood about boxing, MMA. What's with the ring girls? Why is this even a thing?
I don't know
Like,
why it's a thing at all.
it's absolutely
Here's your
just
commentary.
insane. There you go. The ring guy. Oh, and then look at this boxing that's going on.
Well, this is obviously a tough man competition.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Tough man competition. Like those guys have very little training.
Little, yeah, absolutely. So it's a pretty wacky, funny video.
Oh,
And
I don't
so
know
this
about funny.
Yeah, and so this next one is, folks, gun safety is extremely important. All right.
Yeah. So alcohol and guns don't mix, right?
Yeah, and you'll see momentarily why that is as soon as Chris brings up this video.
This one makes me sad too. Here we
It's
go.
just so sad. All right.
So I mean, the guy's he
Wow.
shoots a shotgun, pretty much straight up in the air.
Yeah.
It looks like it's a double barrel. He fires both barrels at once, pretty much straight up in the air for no reason whatsoever. It's stupid as hell. The gun comes out of his hand,
And like
smacks him in the
smashes him.
face,
Like it's so brutal.
and
And I
then he
feel
falls down.
well, and I think the worst part is I'm 100% assuming this is that I think there was probably a little bit of shit talking probably happening as they were drinking,
Yeah.
and probably ended up, oh, I can shoot the shotgun, da 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 da, or they put the gun in the guy's hand and be like, here, shoot this, and thought that they'd get a laugh out of it. So,
Either
folks,
way,
don't drink and shoot.
don't do it. Hey, that's kind of it for the news. Why don't we?
Speaking of drinking,
Speaking
Yeah.
of drinking, let's talk about responsible drinking, shall we?
Yeah. If you're gonna drink, don't shoot. And if you're gonna drink local.
that's right.
So we're obviously here with Darcy. Darcy, let's introduce you for a second here first. I mean, you work for a local craft beer company. Would you call it a microbrewery?
Yeah, I guess I call it more of a microbrewery. I don't know if there's really like a legal distinction or anything. I just know between micro and macro, it's just how much you produce a year.
Right.
But yeah, we're independently owned and we're Saskatchewan's first microbrewery.
You guys are Saskatchewan's first microbrewery. Go ahead, give it a plug.
Yeah, Paddockwood Brewing Co. So we've been around since technically 1996. We started as a brewery in 2006. Before that, it was a home brew supply store.
Fantastic. So we've brought you on kind of to talk to us about craft beer and all things about beer. I think that beer is one of those things that, let's compare wine to beer, right? I mean, people look at wine and they think snobbery and, notes of chocolate and a smooth finish and all this kind of ridiculousness. And when people think about beer, well, frankly, they think about, Bob and Doug McKenzie when it comes to Canada. And the redneck catfish coolie, if you guys know who that is, the YouTube star kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
But beer has, especially, what would you say, like the last 5-10 years, probably 10 years?
It's been since like the late '90s, early 2000s in the
So like
U.S.
20
and
years
then,
now.
Yeah, and then here we're probably a decade behind the U.S. So
Right. So the
probably
craft, I
less,
mean,
but
craft beer is all about kind of small batch, local, non-mass produced, commercially available beer. Is that fair to say?
correct, yeah. And if we're talking about wine snobbery, I think there's
I was,
equal snobbery in the craft beer industry.
I was just gonna say I think now more than ever we're seeing a snobbery showing up in the craft world.
Well, I was going
Oh,
to
yeah.
say that. Yeah, I didn't really. I should have finished what I was trying to say. Is that the craft beer experiment really seems to have brought that sort of culture to beer? Hey.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, it's I mean, it's founded on people thinking they can brew beer better than the next guy, and it's a friendly competition now. But I think before it was we can brew beer better than the traditional North American or the North American lager.
So now it's all man buns and skinny jeans
Yeah,
and
shoes
beer
with buckles
snobbery.
on them and hats from the 1920s.
So
Yeah.
so you just said something that I think we should try to answer some pressing questions that people have, and one of the questions I've always wondered, and I've looked it up, and it's also from the 90s. What the heck is the difference between a beer and a lager and an ale and a freaking, I don't know, a pale ale and all this other stuff? So kind of walk us through some of these very common terms that we're hearing people using all the time. If you could explain it.
So beer can be broken down into pretty much three categories. You've got ales and lagers, and which that's just a lager is fermented at a lower temperature and an ale is fermented at a higher temperature. So lagers didn't gain popularity until refrigeration was possible. Then you could brew them everywhere. And then you've got the sour beers, the lambics, the wild ferments, which is how beer originated. It was brewed with just the random yeast that was fooling around the environment. You still see it a lot in Belgian brewing and somewhat in German brewing, but German's I can't remember the actual name of the law, but there is a law in Germany that you can only use 4 ingredients in beer, right? Malt, hops, yeast, and water.
Well, they've got some
And in
pretty good
Belgium,
beer,
you can
so
just
maybe
do
that's
whatever
not
you
a
want.
bad thing.
Yeah.
Have either you two ever drank beer in Germany?
I haven't
No,
drank beer in Germany. I've had beer from Germany.
So I was
Yeah,
I
same.
was in Munich during Oktoberfest in 2015. 2015, I think it was 2015. And they basically they brew their Oktoberfest beer kind of for Oktoberfest, and it's like there's no preservatives in it whatsoever. They just kind of brew it, it's ready in time, they drink it throughout Oktoberfest, and then like it's gone, and that's it. But like you're drinking it in these big moss jugs, like the giant like things and steins and stuff, and it is easily the best beer I've ever tasted in my life. So they're obviously doing something right.
Yeah, and that's the way it should be, right? Your beer has no preservatives in it. It's made in small batches. You drink it within a month or two.
Yeah.
And actually, as we're talking about the difference between beer styles, I actually just today discovered craftbeer.com,
Yeah.
and there's a beer styles guide. And if you go to craftbeer.com and just click on the top heading that says beer styles, it breaks down like every single style of beer that's currently in the BJCHP, I think it's called, which is just a style guideline. And if you want
Where
to
am I
look up
going
a
on
beer
this
that
website?
has, so if you're at craftbeer.com,
Yeah.
right on the top there, it says under beer, what is craft beer, and then beer styles.
I'm going to share this
If
up
you
so we
click
can
on
talk
beer
about this here.
styles, yeah, I can just send you the link in the chat here, and then we can just
I got
pull
it.
it up.
I got it here. Yeah.
We got it, nice. Yeah, so you can break it down in between like what you kind of want for flavor, your bitterness, your color, your SRM, and you can even print off a tasting sheet. And then if you just click on one of the styles, it'll tell you all about that style. Some of the newer ones don't have a lot of information. Like some of them will have, I actually think we clicked on a good one because it does have a video. And it'll actually tell you like commonly used hops, commonly used wheats, Yeah, see, there's the video, and it tells you like your color zone, your IBU, which is how bitter your beer is,
Where's the
um,
IBU?
right there.
Oh, right here. I see.
Yeah, so you've got
So
your
the higher the IBU, the more bitter it is.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think it's
So
like
here's
70.
a question now. So
Yeah.
every single craft IPA I've ever tasted
Yeah.
is bitter,
Yeah.
which, this chart kind of indicates.
Yeah.
Why is Alexander Keith's not bitter?
I have no idea what's going on with Alexander Keith's because it's not a British IPA. It's not an English IPA. It's not an American IPA. I've had it once and I didn't like it.
It's like just
Um,
not an IPA, is it?
No, and according to the style guidelines, it's not even close to an IPA. So I don't know why they're even allowed to call it that.
Well, that's a travesty because for mass-produced bottled beer, I actually like Keith's.
Yeah.
And that made me think that I liked IPAs. And then like I've tasted some of your IPAs before, and like other companies and various other things. Like I'm like, these are I don't like bitter beer.
Yeah.
I don't like sweet beer, but I don't like bitter beer. Like I'm probably like in this sort of a neighborhood in terms of what I really like for beer. And I've hated every IPA I've ever tasted except for Keith's. And the problem
tried,
is
like, a
I
West
drank Keith's before I ever tried any other IPAs, and they're just not an IPA. They're falsely advertising those Nova Scotians.
And that wouldn't fly anywhere else in the world except for North America.
Yeah, well, for sure, right?
Yeah.
So what? Let's do an experiment here. Let's try to categorize Alexander Keith's. What do you think you would categorize it as?
I would categorize it as a cream ale.
Cream ale.
Cream ale. Where would I find that here?
If you just go all the way up to the top, you can actually just type in on the search bar cream ale, right there. American cream ale. Does that look more like Keith's?
It really does. Yeah. Yeah. 4.3 to 5.7 alcohol, 10 to 22 IBU. Like, I guess like all I have is like a range, right? I mean, that seems more about where it is, and the color seems about right.
Yeah.
And I would probably, seriously, salads, mild shellfish, Monterey Jack, and lemon custard tart.
Oh,
We
yeah.
are absolutely right when we say that the craft beer industry is bringing the snobbery into beer, aren't we?
Oh yeah, like when you go into a restaurant now, and they pair the beers with the thing. Like I work in a very hipster area. Like they'll sell you a deconstructed Caesar salad for $29.95.
What is a deconstructed Caesar salad?
Literally,
It's just a
basically,
lazy chef.
it's the salad and the croutons and the thing, and they all come in mason jars. It's a horrible experience.
So they just don't put it together for you.
Yeah, basically.
That was the dumbest ass thing I've ever heard of. But these are the hippies that are trying to save the world, and they're using
right.
more dishes, requiring more dish soap, requiring more water usage.
Yeah, but we didn't use a plastic straw, so we didn't hurt the damn turtles, right?
Idiots.
So yeah, so it's funny though, because like you go into these restaurants now, and at lunchtime, like I'll go to a restaurant and they'll be like, "Hey, this is a great beer for you." I'm like, "It's 11:30 in the morning. What are you doing trying to sell me a freaking beer? What the hell's wrong with you?" Right?
Yeah,
like,
but you know what? Again, when I was in Germany, okay, the very first day that we arrived in Munich, we stayed in a small little town, maybe 35 minutes north of Munich called Regensburg. And we woke up the very first morning, we go downstairs, and it's just this little dining area. We sit down, we order our breakfast, and it's like Weissbier and Brezen. It's like white beer and a pretzel with a honey mustard kind of a dip with it, and is like the best breakfast you've ever had in your life.
Right.
And I look across the dining room, and there's this little old couple, and they were 85 if they were a day. Like they could have been in their 90s.
Yeah.
And both of them were having Weissbier and Brezen for breakfast. And we're talking like not a mass of beer, but like, so you see this glass here, this flute,
right?
Make it a tall flute. What would you call that, Darcy?
Well, it'd be a proper pint. That would be more like now I'm trying to think of the name of it, like a Pilsner glass, like a really tall glass.
So how many
And
ounces would be in this approximately?
Well, if this is US, it's 16 ounce. The US pint is 16.
Okay, so
And then
what
UK is
these
20.
little old people were having for breakfast was easily like 26 ounces, possibly even 32 ounces. It was
Oh,
just
yeah, I
like
think-
this super
yeah.
tall, thin flute, right?
Yeah.
And this was at 8:30 in the morning.
Oh yeah.
And
Just
but
because you can when you're 85 doesn't mean you should do it when
Hey,
you're
I did it
trying to
too.
have lunch.
But it's a vice. It was probably like 3.5%.
yeah, I'm not sure what the percentage of the Oktoberfest beer was or the Weiss beer, but
So
I
speaking
couldn't tell you.
of percentages, really quick, my understanding is that it's the carbonation that actually increases the potency of the like a beer's a 5%,
Yeah.
but apparently it's the carbonation that actually causes you to feel like you've just drank a 20% or 30% alcohol. Do you know if that's
How does that
accurate?
work?
Or?
Yeah, I haven't played a lot with carbonation. Like most beers,
Yeah.
most beer that you find in North America is carbonated all to the same volume.
Right. Yeah. Well,
Um,
that's why like you'll see like 1 ounce of whiskey is equal to 1 glass of beer. The way it
Are you
affects
talking
your
about
blood
these
alcohol.
government charts?
Well, the blood alcohol, the way it impacts your ability to drive and
Yeah.
all of this,
But
right?
those are
So
government
it's
charts, man, and they're always so dumbed down that they don't account for 9/10 of crap, and they're just stupidity.
yeah,
that's
and
fair.
you'd be looking more at like your base ingredients. So if you're drinking like bigger beer, like an Anheuser-Busch brand beer, you're going to be drinking a beer that's made with like a lot of like high fructose corn sugar,
Right.
or rice in some cases,
Yeah.
and that's
Like
just not good
Budweiser.
for anyone.
Yeah.
So that
that's
also
fair.
contributes to like a lot of the hangover and stuff you get from beer. And it's
Sugar,
actually the reason why Steve, the brewmaster, started Paddock Wood, was because he couldn't drink the traditional beer anymore because of all the crap they were putting into it.
Right.
That makes sense.
What about this old wives' tale of ether? I used to always be told, like, don't drink Molson Canadian. It'll give you bad hangovers. You can drink Kokanee instead because they use ether to filter Molson Canadian or something. And understand this is like mid 90s that I'm talking here, but do you know anything about that? Is that actually a thing?
I've never heard that. This
It's
is
probably just like
yeah.
morons talking stupidity 30 years ago.
Yeah, it was probably. I mean, I don't think ether has any clarifying properties to it. Like we do use a clarifying mixture. It's just an organic mixture. It's not ether. Or you use like this deactivated clay compound, or Irish moss.
It's like a filter more than anything.
Yeah, and you do filter with like diastatic earth.
Right.
But yeah, I've never heard of ether being used. I don't think that would do anything.
Probably not used. It's probably all bull crap.
Yeah.
So here, can we bring that thing back up? Because I wanted to do my personal favorite beer.
Okay,
which,
that's good because I had another question as
Yeah.
well. So you do your personal favorite. What's yours?
okay, so mine is Stella Artois
So you're looking for Belgian?
Pale Lager.
Yeah. Would it be?
Did you say Atrost? It's Stella Artois.
Whatever. Artois. I don't care.
Do you
Stella.
like to drink your Stella Artois on Marquis Drive?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so what kind of a beer is Stella Artois?
Belgian Pale Lager, according to them.
It'll be a Belgian. Yeah, there you go. Belgian Pale Ale.
So they called it a lager, but we're talking about an ale now.
Yeah, and
if they call the lager, it'll be a clear beer. But I don't think there's actually a beer style called a Belgian lager. Belgians are
Wow.
pretty much all ales.
Interesting.
Isn't that interesting?
So now I actually had a question about that. So you said the difference is the temperature at which it is fermented. So
Yeah.
lagers are fermented at higher temperature or lower temperature?
Lagers are at about 17 degrees Celsius, and ales are at about 20 degrees Celsius.
And then how does that change?
what is
the
that?
beer?
How does that impact it?
It's bottom versus top fermenting, and I always actually get the two confused as to which ferments on the bottom and which ferments on the top.
Okay.
Lagers are a much slower process, and you get this. It's called diacetyl, and it's like a caramel flavor. Have you had Pilsner or Cal?
I think so. but
It's
probably
got
a
like a
commercial
really
one that
weird-
isn't what it says it is.
Yeah, it's
I
got
mean,
like
I've
kind
had
of weird
Great
like
West
burnt
Pilsner.
caramel. There you go. Well, actually, they probably had some in Germany that would have had the flavor to it. It's just like
I'll be honest with
slightly
you,
burnt
the
caramel.
only beer I drank was their local Weiss beer for breakfast and the Oktoberfest beer.
Okay, yeah. So you wouldn't have had anything with diacetyl in it.
No.
And with lagers, you have to raise the temperature right at the end just to get rid of that.
Okay.
And it takes longer for a lager. So that's why you see a lot of craft brewers not brewing lagers, because it takes longer. So it sits in the tank for longer. Space is limited as it is.
So
they
then what's
can't
the
really afford to
advantage? Is it just a flavor difference?
Yeah, it's more approachable. You don't get a lot of like the funkiness to it that you would get from other yeasts.
Now, what do you mean by funky? Oh, I mean, it comes out less yeasty, the end result?
Yeah, like you guys have had like Stella's got a bit of a funkiness to it, but any kind of wit beer, like
Yeah.
a Kronenberg 1664 or a Hogarden.
Yeah.
There's quite a few local ones have like almost a funkiness to it that is really off-putting, and any ale is going to have that left over in it.
Okay. So the idea with the lager is it's more that commercial taste of beer.
Yeah, more watery taste.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
sorry, and I just brought up the Wikipedia on Stella, and it says that it's a Belgian Pilsner. So what the hell's a Pilsner versus a lager?
That's extremely strange that they would call it that, being in that close to the Czech Republic, because in Europe you can only call your beer a Pilsner if it's made in the Pilsen area. And it's just a lager made in Pilsen. And outside of Europe, you're allowed to call it Pilsner.
Oh, so yeah, and so it actually redefines it, and it says that it's an international Pilsner.
There you go. Yeah, and a Pilsner is what like the North American lager is based on.
So a Pilsner is just a lager that is brewed in a particular area. Same idea as champagne. But everybody has just taken the term and run with it outside of that area.
Pilsner is
Kleenex. A buzz
Kleenex.
to it.
Yeah, exactly.
Pilsner is like Kleenex or something like that. It's
Skidoo.
one of those.
Yeah,
Skidoo,
the whole 9 yards. So your Stella Artois. So would you say this is pretty representative of Stella, Darcy?
I would say, yeah.
Stella's a lot more clear.
So where this doesn't, so this seems to be missing something, and it seems to be missing a clarity index.
Yeah, if you scroll down a bit, you'll actually see right here. You can see the appearance, and then under appearance on the left hand side it says your clarity.
Okay.
And then like your flavor and aroma, what you're looking for. But actually, if you were to download that tasting sheet, it's a full page, and it gives you like aromas like alcohol, hops, malt, esters, phenols. What you're kind of looking for when you're tasting a beer. And it's as complicated as like a wine tasting sheet.
So just bringing it back to this whole website again, what is the organization that kind of, I'm sure there are many, but what is the organization that is kind of recognized as the organization that is overseeing all of these designations?
You've got, again, like you said, there's a ton of organizations. There's a couple different beer like judging programs. And I think it's BJCP is like the biggest one. And they determine like, if you're a BJCP judge, someone can give you a beer and you can taste it and you'll be able to tell like exactly which hops are in it, which malt is in it, what kind of beer it actually is. I got to talk a little bit about this with the brewmaster when he went and did his panel for this. And while you're writing this test, they bring around samples of beer and they'll say like, this claims to be an American red ale. Tell me what it actually is. So you have to be able to pick those things up. So again, we're just back to, it's just as snobby as wine nowadays.
That's right.
Yeah. And in Saskatchewan, like every province has their own, but in Saskatchewan, we have the Saskatchewan Craft Brewers Association. And that's just pretty much all the breweries are welcome to it. There's like fees and stuff. They organize events. They have their own website that you can go to so you can check out the craft breweries in Saskatchewan. And
so would you think that this craftbeer.com is probably more representative of your average craft beer than it is representative of your average commercial beer?
Yes, actually on there, I just discovered this too. There is, under what is craft beer, right beside beer styles. If you scroll down, this only works in the US, but there's an, is it a craft brewery? And you can type in the name of a brewery and it'll tell you if they're independently owned or not.
Oh, wow. So if what do you think? Should we do this on air?
Yeah, type in Goose Island.
Goose Island?
Yep.
Who's Goose Island?
I can't remember where they're from, but they're a brewery that kind of got big in the 90s and got bought out.
So we've got Goose Island, Philadelphia, Barrel House, Beer Co., Fulton Street, and Brew Pub. Here, I'll share so that our viewers can follow this too. Sorry, which one am I looking for?
Goose Island Beer. Yeah, that one works.
Barrel House?
Philadelphia.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, there. Yeah.
Well, they are not an independent craft brewery anyway.
Yeah. So then,
Goose Island, Philadelphia.
Yeah. So then type in.
Because
Dogfish.
Anheuser-Busch owns more than 25% of the brewery.
Yeah.
Is that how you
Yeah,
spell
we won't
paddock?
be on there. Type
too
in
small, hey?
Yeah, well, we're not in the U.S. I think it's only U.S. breweries.
Ah, I got you. Okay.
Yeah. So if you type in Dogfish, just one word. Yeah, Dogfish Head Brewing and Eats, or whichever one, and there you go.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So again, so that the hippie snobs with the man buns can find their like a small local brewery.
You
Rather
keep
than
calling them
accidentally-
hippies. They're hipsters.
Yeah, they're hippies.
If you're going to insult them, at least insult them correctly.
I'm going to insult them further by not insulting them correctly.
So, and speaking of the hipsters, one of the questions I have is like, obviously microbreweries are here to stay, but do you think this, like, so what happened with the wine industry, especially recently, is the snobbery kind of collapsed in on itself. They started doing like different experiments, and they would take the snobbiest of the snobs and fill the red bottle of wine with, baby duck, and then the guy would pontificate about its aromas and all this stuff, and it basically collapsed some of the facade that was really around some of these sommeliers and stuff like that. Do you think this is something that do you think that the craft brewery industry is setting itself up for failure, where somebody's going to start pouring freaking kokanee into a bottle and show it off and be like, no, you guys are all full of BS, just like the wine people?
Well, just for myself, I don't think so, because like you can easily tell the difference between a kokanee and like a craft made pilsner. There's a very clear difference.
Right.
And just when you're thinking about beer, the difference between like a West Coast IPA and a New England IPA is a vast difference. And there's no snobs that are drinking, West Coast IPA and saying, oh, these hops are from the Yakima Valley, from this lot grown in this year.
Right.
They're not getting as in depth as wine snobs. I would like to see the collapse, because I think the biggest problem that we face right now is there's an app called Untapped, and it's like the biggest beer rating thing. But as you've seen with like the tasting notes, beer's not just, do you like it, yes or no, but that's how this app sees it. Right. So if, like Chris, you said you don't like IPAs, if you were to try like a British IPA, you'd hate it.
Right.
But you would go on Tapped and give that a 1 star and like knock that brewery's rating down. And that doesn't make any sense.
And the reality is I just don't like the style of beer. It's not that there's anything wrong with the brewery. It may be like the best representation of a British IPA. I just don't like bitter beers.
Yeah, exactly. And it should be more geared towards that rather than, but that's the problem with everything. Like everyone thinks they're a movie critic, a music critic, and they go online and they post their opinion. They don't realize that if something's good, it doesn't mean you like it. If you like something, it doesn't mean it's good. If you don't like something, it doesn't mean it's bad.
It's
it
the
means
Google
you did
reviews of the beer world.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let me ask you this: what is your favorite type of beer?
Man, that changes like every week. But last week I tried my first sour IPA, and that's got to be my favorite. It kind of reminds me of a gin and tonic, and if I'm not drinking beer, I'm drinking gin. So. And like some really good go-tos are like wit beers. I really like dry beers like Pilsners, and like Stella is one of my favorites. And as for like commercial beers, I still really like Sapporo. They have such an interesting approach to beer in Japan, where like they do so many experiments on hopping, on yeast, on all these different things. And it's a science more than an art in Japan. So they know that with the ingredients they've used, they have the best possible beer. And when you look at people in the industry, I'm reading a book right now called The New IPA, and it's all about how to utilize hops and all this research this guy has done. And he cites a lot of Sapporo studies because they're constantly testing things out. And it shows. Like they have a far superior beer to like anything else on the market that's comparable to them.
Interesting.
That is. So if somebody were, if you were to give us a 30-second or 2-minute kind of spiel to people about getting into craft beer, and I don't mean necessarily just brewing it, but like trying to, like what should people try? What are some beers that maybe a person can taste to kind of get their palate wet and to start to kind of understand these differences? Because we're from Saskatchewan. If it's not a green and white box of pill with the bunny on it or original 16, then people aren't drinking it. So
Yeah, exactly. So I've done a lot of tastings in liquor stores, and so you get so many people who they've tried like your green box pills, and they decide they don't like beer. And I equate beer to like your coffee preferences. So if you like your coffee black, you're gonna like a porter or a Schwarzbier, something really like strong and heavy. And so we get a lot of people that come in that they've tried their Kokanese or whatever, dislike it. You had them our Schwarzbier, our Black Cat, which is a black lager, and they love it. If you like your beer with cream and sugar, then maybe like an amber ale or a brown ale. But if you've tried like the American lagers and decide that you don't like beer, broaden your horizons. Go to in Saskatoon, Prairie Sun Brewing has an amazing tap room. In Regina, Pile of Bones, they have tons of beers, and you can go and sample them all. And just equate it to how you take your coffee. A darker beer is going to have more of those complex flavors that you enjoy, and a lighter beer is going to be a little bit more sweet. So yeah, just try them. Support local.
yeah, for sure. That's awesome. So, sorry, Chris.
No, go ahead, Mark. It's good.
Yeah, no, I find it fascinating. I'm at a point in my life where I really don't drink anymore, right? Because I'm getting older, and especially for training and stuff, that it's hard to have a couple of drinks and then train the next day. But I have to say this conversation has really kind of reinvigorated my love of beer, because I was out in Newfoundland last year last year May, and I got to do a tasting at a microbrewery there, and everything tasted like cod. No, but it was so good to taste all the different beers, right? So I just have to say that I think that I might be picking myself up a case or two here coming up soon. So, and yeah, I have actually tried Padwick before. You've provided us some growlers and that sort of stuff, and yeah, it's some pretty tasty beer for sure. So,
Yeah,
awesome.
thank you.
Yeah,
Fantastic. Well, hopefully we gave some people some good ideas of what they can try for beers. What would you say is the most popular that Paddock would sell? So which beer is the most popular?
The most popular right now is our 606. It's a British IPA, but if you're not into that kind of beer, I would recommend the Checkmate, which is probably our second most, which is a Pilsner. So you can see like a proper representation of the style that the North American lager is based on.
So when in North America, when we call them Pilsners,
yeah,
we're basically just talking about like American cream American lagers.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Okay. Before we go away, I got while you guys were talking, I was looking up. So this is the breakfast beer, essentially. This is the breakfast beer that I would have had. It's actually rated quite a bit sweeter than I would have expected, or not sweeter, but at least lower bitterness. And what's really interesting is they even the hipsters say it should be paired with pretzel bread, which
nice.
I can attest to that. It is quite good with pretzel
but
bread.
almost everything should be paired with pretzel bread. Like literally pretzel bread should just be bread. Like I don't know why we have bread and not pretzel bread.
But here's the problem. The I didn't mention this, but like the Weissbier and Bretzen comes with a Weisswurst, which is like a white sausage, and again, like you can't find one in I don't know if all of Bavaria. I wasn't in all of Bavaria, but from what I was told, you can't find one for sale after 11, maybe 11:30 in the morning, because they make them fresh first thing in the morning, and they're specifically sold for breakfast. And by the time noon comes around, it's not that great of anyway, because there's no, like, it's not fresh anymore.
Right.
And so what this should say is white sausage on pretzel bread. If they said that, then they would be absolutely correct. And this is, I can attest to the fact that this is an amazing breakfast beer, since we're talking about early morning drinking. Secondly, I was looking, and they said that most Oktoberfest beers are similar to a Vienna style lager.
Yeah.
And other than the fact that this seems a little bit darker than what I remember for what I was drinking, the rest of it seems about on par. And I remember they were extremely clear beers that I was drinking in Munich as well. So just in case, I think I might try to see if I can recapture this too. I remember Hofbrauhaus was where I doubt you can probably even get it in Canada, but that's where we went to that brewery in downtown Munich, and it was absolutely the best beer I've ever tasted in my entire life. So that's
Awesome.
just for interest's sake there.
Cool.
Anything you want to leave us with, Darcy? Any last words you want to say about beer and what people should drink?
I do have something that's it's kind of funny about craft beer, because Anchor Steam, which is pretty synonymous now with like independent brewing in the U.S., was in danger of going out in 1965, and the person that came along to save them was Fritz Maytag of like Maytag Appliances. So the
Really?
craft beer movement in the U.S. was pretty much started by Maytag.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
So
Other than that, like just to reiterate what I said, don't be afraid of craft beer. Literally, there's craft beer out there for everyone. If you want a beer that tastes like those fuzzy peach candies, there's a beer out there for that.
yeah, but why?
Because people like fuzzy peach candies.
This coming
Yeah.
from you there, daiquiri man.
Hey, at least a daiquiri is literally like, it's not beer that we've made into fruit flavory slush. It is designed to be a fruit flavored slush. Beer is beer, fruit slush is fruit slush.
Yeah, if you ever go out with Chris, make sure you hit up a restaurant that has a peach daiquiris, and he'll just be happy.
Oh, for sure.
It's not daiquiris, it's bellinis, but whatever. Whatever.
That's worse.
A peach bellini is fantastic, but you know what? You take me to a steakhouse or a burger house, and I'm all over the beer.
Well, get your craft beer up now and just figure out which beer you should be having with that porterhouse beer.
Well, that's part of the problem, though, is, you know, you look at your average restaurant, you kind of have to go to the highfalutin hippie restaurants now to get, I would guess, a proper craft, which means a properly crafted beer. You go to like a Moxie's or a Brown's Social House or Brown's Ale House or whatever they call them. You ask them what's on tap, and it's all domestic crap, and maybe one expensive or rather large craft brewery, supposedly craft brewery, but is it really a craft beer? Are they selling you the right stuff?
Well, no, and go to those restaurants and ask what they have on tap that's local.
Yeah,
because they just start naming anything that isn't kokanee, and sometimes kokanee is on that list of local products.
Well, but you go in this province and you ask them what's on local, and the only thing they'll tell you is 016.
Yeah.
Which are their beers accurate?
They're going after the North American lager. I've only had one of their beers. I guess I've had two because I've had the Radler. Their Prairie White is fairly accurate for the wit beer should be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fair. All right. Well, fantastic. Thanks. Are we going to leave it there, or we got anything more to anybody wants to say about beer?
Nope, just drink more.
Just drink more. Well, it sounds like it's time for someone to get off of Mark's lawn.
I'm thinking so. So, being large and in charge is kind of my thing. You may even be surprised that I don't like to show a lot of weakness because, well, it's weak. But regardless of how much vitamin D I cram into my face hole, once a year, I'm relegated to a whimpering, snot snorting sickie. Now, this may be because of microscopic invaders attacking my nose like the Huns coming over the Great Wall, but you'd be wrong. It's because we live in a province that feeds most of the world, which means this time of year, combines are working hard to bring the crops in from the fields. These crops, while feeding millions of, these crops, while feeding millions, produce an insane amount of dust and pollen. And yes, pollen is also known as plant ejaculation.
That's just a wonderful image.
Isn't
Thank
that
you for
horrible? That's horrible, but that's really what it is. Gross. Which causes my body to react the only way I know how, by overreacting and trying to kill every last thing it can. So to prevent my annual discomfort and illness, hay fever, the millions of people that, so to prevent my annual discomfort and illness, hay fever, and the millions of people who are fed by my suffering need to get the hell up off my lawn.
So you basically want the majority of the world that eats grains to get off your lawn.
That's right. Stop it, because I don't feel good for a couple days every year.
Oh, you poor man.
Right.
Well, you know, I have hay fever, but I'm not going to be a whiny little bitch about it.
That's fair. I'm going to be.
I drink enough
to get
beer
off
unhealthy,
of my
so.
lawn are computers. You know that we rely on your stupid asses, but you fail us regularly. I bought a rather expensive gaming computer a few years ago, not because I wanted to game, but because the gaming computer is supposed to be solidly built to last and capable of good upgrades. Well, it lasted long enough for me to upgrade it a few months ago. I put 3 new hard drives in it, expanding the amount of storage space that I had. And just a couple of months later, I tried to turn it on, and I noticed that it was running on battery power despite being plugged in. Well, damn. A few hours of research later, I found out that it's one of 3 things that have likely failed. Either the battery, which is not removable in this PC. I mean, you can take it out, but you got to deal with like heat treated glue and thermal paste and all kinds of ridiculousness. So either that battery is dead, preventing it from taking a charge, or the power adapter has failed, despite the fact that there are zero outward signs of cable shortage or anything that could make it fail, or the power control motherboard on the power control module on the motherboard is kaput. So I can spend several hundreds of dollars shooting in the dark and trying to troubleshoot this thing, or I can get a new PC before I plan to. Listen, I know that 3 years is a long time in PC years, but when I spend the sort of money on the liquid-cooled laptop like I did with this one, I expect you to make it at least 5 years. Screw you and your power thermal coupling battery adapter thingamajigs. Get off my lawn. And as a side note, a major reason for why we did not have an episode last week is because of exactly what I'm talking about.
No computer, no podcasty.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Mark, who are you shouting out?
Hey, I'm going to keep it simple and short. I want to shout out the coaches who stepped up and took my classes this weekend so that I could heal and feel better. You are the real heroes in this world. So that would be you, Chris, and Coach Josh. Thanks, guys, for taking my classes. Even though apparently I'm being a little whiny, but I don't even care. All I want is to lay down and have some toast with jam on it. It's a thing, man. I like toast and jam when I'm sick. I just love it. It's the best.
I could do that. What kind of jam?
Like strawberry or raspberry. I'm good either way. And then you know what I do like to also put on? You gotta turn on some Price is Right when you're sick. That reminds you of when you were sick growing up.
You watched The Price is Right when you were sick as a child.
Yeah, man. Price is Right, and then what was it?
You know what reminds me of when I was sick?
What's that?
VHS recordings of He-Man and G.I. Joe.
Nice. Yeah,
that makes me more of a man, doesn't it?
Maybe, but Price is Right is still badass.
Fantastic. Hey, Darcy, I don't want to put you on the spot, but just before I do my shout out, is there anybody that you'd like to improv that maybe has been bugging you and you need to have get off your lawn?
I actually have one for this. As I touched on earlier, the amateur critics, get off my lawn. Like I said before, just because you enjoy something doesn't make it good. And just because you dislike something doesn't make it bad. Like, I love the movie Congo, but I can admit that that's an awful movie. And I'm
right.
not going to recommend that to people who are looking for a good movie. I'm going to recommend that to people who are looking for a trash movie. I don't go on Letterboxd and give it a 5-star rating. And it doesn't make me a critic because I have 10 followers on Letterboxd and I've got 2 badges on Untapped. So amateur critics, get off my lawn.
Oh,
That
love
was
it.
really good. I'm going to assume that you have a shout out too then.
I do. I'm going to give a shout out to all the breweries that are opening or are planned on opening this year across the province. So you've got Rafter R, you've got Warehouse, Iron Bridge, Park Brewing, Better Brother, and specifically Homebound opening in Warman here.
Fantastic.
Nice.
Geez, that's a lot of breweries for a small province.
A
Eh?
lot of hipsters.
The expansion in microbrewing is insane here.
The hipsters are going to have all their Antifa fuel.
They're not going to know what to do.
Oh, they'll know what to do.
Drink beer.
Yeah.
And
All right.
on Untapped.
Well, my shout out goes out to everyone returning to classes at my academy. I can see what it does for everyone's mental health to be able to exercise and to be a part of the community again in any way other than just virtually. Sure, social distancing while training exists, and the hand washing would have made a severe OCD person blush prior to the pandemic nonsense, but at least people are remembering what it's like to have human connection again. So my shout out goes out to everyone who's making that happen.
Love it.
And that's pretty much going to do it for episode 11. I want to thank Darcy for joining us and talking to us about beer and specific types of beer and craft beer and helping us find the types of beer that we like. And the website, that was a pretty good find there, that craftbeer.com. Yeah. Hopefully, if you're interested in beer and don't know what kind of beer you like or what kind of beer you've been drinking, hopefully you can find it on that website. If you guys would like to follow more in relation to us, you can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/DeEducated. You can also find us on Patreon at patreon.com/DeEducated. You can find our website at deeducated.ca, and you can also listen to our podcast, the audio format of our podcast, wherever podcasts are found. That means we are on most of them. Just search for the DeEducated podcast through your favorite podcast app. If you want to watch the show specifically on YouTube, you can do that. You can find us as the DeEducated podcast on YouTube as well. I believe that's about it. Darcy, any final words?
Thanks for having me on. Get out there and drink local.
Get out there and drink. You heard it from Darcy.
Awesome.
Responsibly. Don't shoot double-barrel shotguns at the sky.
Yeah, well, don't do that in general, whether you've been drinking or not. That's just stupidity.
Yeah.
Gun safety is smart, okay? All right, Mark, what's your slogan?
Bye.
In case I don't see ya, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.